I've had the privilege of sitting down with some incredible ranchers over the years. People who built something from nothing, survived things that should have broken them, and came out on the other side with something worth passing down. At the same time, I also visit with ranchers weekly who are struggling, whether in a startup business or trying to turn around a failing one. They're tired and frustrated, and they're wondering if they're on the right track. That's what this show is about. I'm John Haskell, the host of Ranchonomics, the podcast dedicated to helping ranchers win at business. Ranchonomics Stories is where we go deeper with longer conversations that describe the journey behind the success we see today, the hard years, the turning points, and the lessons that only come from living it. I want these stories to inspire us to keep going even when it's hard, to remind us that success really is possible, to drown out the voices that say it can't be done, and to reinforce our resolve to keep going until we win. Welcome to Ranchonomics Stories. All right, welcome to another edition of Ranchonomics Podcast Stories version. I am here today with Brian and Jill Munger from Springview, Nebraska, and I am very excited to talk to them about at least Brian's very long history of running his family operation. So, Brian and Jill, why don't you guys introduce yourself?
Good. Brian and Jill Munger, Springview, Nebraska, which is north central. So if you get up on the hill south of our house, you can actually see South Dakota. So that's how close to the line that we are. Really not Sandhills, transition kind of county. We're just on the east side of the Sandhills, but on the west side of farm country to the east of us. And we got Sandhills to the south and clay and gumbo type ground in South Dakota to the north of us. So fifth generation here on the Munger homestead. My great-great-grandfather homesteaded, actually did a tree claim here in 1883. So excited to be here. Generation number 5 we are, and raising up generation 6 to take over from us. So I was born and raised here, graduated here, went to University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and graduated from there with an animal science degree, with my goal of always wanting to ranch. So I knew from a young age this is where I wanted to be, and so as soon as I could get out of Lincoln, we moved back and started ranching with my dad. So
cool.
Let Jill introduce herself.
I'm Jill Munger. I grew up about 2.5 hours south of here, more farming country. We did have cattle though too, and my dad had a feedlot, so in the tractor a lot and worked cattle a lot. I went to college. I got an associate's degree in vet tech, but used that for a couple of years and then got married and just started helping Brian and raising kids, I guess.
Good. And you guys have a kid or two?
We do. We have 6 kids. So
you probably use the vet
and
tech skills on them, huh?
Yeah.
Come in real handy there.
Sew them up.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the family keeps growing. So we got 3 boys and 3 girls. 4 of the kids are now married, and 1 has a child of their own. So we have our first grandchild, actually a granddaughter. It's
Awesome.
a year old right now. So we're looking forward to that new phase of being thankful that we didn't kill our own kids so we could enjoy the grandkids.
Excellent. Well, let's go into let's sort of talk through the history of this. And as those of you that have listened to any of these episodes already know, my goal here is to sort of inspire some of our younger people by talking to examples of people that have kind of been through it. So you guys have been doing this for a couple of decades. Let's talk a little about the transition, as you came back to college. What sort of happened there? How did that work with your family? And then we'll come forward to the present tense. So tell us a little about the early years.
I graduated from University of Nebraska in 1997, came back, and we were pretty traditional for the most part in how we ranched. My dad calved in February. We had enough shelter belts and buildings that he would rather calve in the cold than in the mud of March and April when most of our typical neighbors would calve. So we actually calved earlier than most people. Anyway, I came home from college and I was like, Dad, something's got to change. We spend all summer putting up hay and haul it in all fall and feed it all winter and haul manure out all spring, and then we start all over again. So my dad was actually, even though traditional in that sense, very progressive in a lot of other ways. So we were some of the first people to do any AIing in this country. My grandfather started AIing. So that was one thing. We did started putting in cross fences when I was in high school, and so did a lot of grazing stuff early, but we still calved early. And so I came home from college and I said, Dad, we got to do something different. And so we actually started moving our calving date back about 2 weeks every year. Year 2000, I got introduced to ranching for profit. Went to the Ranching for Profit school. This was right when Dave Pratt was taking over from Stan Parsons. And so went to Pierre, South Dakota, and with my brother-in-law and one other really good friend, learned a lot of things there that changed the way we did things when we came back home. So came home and we continued to move our calving date back. We actually went clear to the 1st of July.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Some of that was based on Dick Divens' low-cost calf school I went to a couple years after Ranching for Profit. And based on, day length and latitude, we determined that July 1st was the best time of year for us to calve. We could have the cows in the least body condition score and get the best conception rates, according to his studies. So we did that, and, just taking over from my dad. When I got home from college, I pretty much took over most of the day-to-day stuff, moving cows, those things. But Dad did all the real final decisions on marketing calves and buying cows and stuff like that. So, but I was chomping at the bit and wanting to do more and more. And I was, and my dad was a young man. So
I was going to ask you how old your dad was at that point.
At that, my dad is 21 years older than me. When I came back from college at 22 years old, he was 43, so started doing
Not
the day-to-day
close to
stuff.
retirement age.
No, but the story that just kind of to share, my dad had always had trouble with his back, and he'd been to 3 different orthopedic surgeons, and they all said he had a herniated disc in his back, and just take it till you can't take it anymore, and then we'll do surgery and fuse you together, and you'll go on with life. Well, he finally got to that point in 2002. I was chomping. I was ready to take over, and Dad was thinking he was going to be laid up for a long time with back surgery. So in 2002, we actually took over everything from my folks. So we leased the land, we leased the cows, and we leased his machinery. So 3 separate leases with the intent to take over the cow herd. It was a lease to own kind of a deal, basically. So kind of a creative way to extend the Dad being able to sell the cows and not get into a lot of tax issues there. So
yeah. And 2002, where was the market at that point? We were not real high then, but we weren't at the bottom either, right?
No, not at the bottom. In fact, actually, I think it was 2003. We sold fall calves that year and averaged $1,000. It was the first time we'd ever averaged over $1,000. So a little bit different than today, but at that time, I actually framed the check and hung it on the wall for a while because I was pretty tickled with it. So, yeah.
Back in the olden days, that was a lot of money.
It was. But long story short there, my dad, one of his friends said, you ought to get another opinion. But instead of going to an orthopedic surgeon, go to a neurosurgeon. And so he was actually able to get into one in Lincoln right away. Took his old x-rays with him, got down there and gave him to the PA. PA looked at him and said, I don't think you have a herniated disc in your back. I think you have a cyst in your back. And
Whoa.
So they took new x-rays. The surgeon came in and said, yeah, you have a cyst in your back. We can cut it out this afternoon and you can go home tomorrow. They said there would be a chance that it would grow back, and eventually it did, and he had to have it removed again. But nothing near as serious as he thought. So he came home and I said, Dad, if you want the ranch back, I know we've already signed lease papers, but if you want it back, you can have it, and Jill and I can go do something else. And he said, Brian, no, this is where you need to be. He said, I think I'm done ranching, and you can take over. So at that time, what was my dad, 48 years old? And so I feel very fortunate that at that stage in his life, he was not only in a position where he could turn things over, but he was willing to turn things over.
And what did he go do, out of curiosity?
Yeah, he worked for me for a little while. He said the only thing that's changed is since I'm working for you, you actually got paid and I don't. But no, he started driving a truck for the neighbors during harvest. And then one of our friends in church, he has a trucking business. So he started trucking full time with him. And then eventually, Holy Spirit got a hold of him and he became an associate pastor with an organization called Village Missions, who supplies small rural churches with pastors who maybe can't afford a full-time pastor and supplements their income so they don't have to get a second job. And so he was an associate with them, so he filled in at churches around the country until they got a full-time pastor. And so he got to meet a lot of cool people and travel to Yampa, Colorado, and Unity, Oregon, and south of us, a little community called Cybrant, which isn't a town, but just a community here in Nebraska. But, served in those churches that are all rural ranching communities. And so it was right up his alley. I think he ended up going to more brandings than I ever did here. So
That's fantastic. Good for him.
Yeah, they did that for till 2014. And that's when my kids were in high school and he was missing. My dad was big into sports, and so they came back in 2014 and started working for me again now. So that's been a great asset to us, is having my folks here again to help out. So
yeah, very good. Want to sharpen your business skills without leaving the ranch? Our Ranch Right webinars cover everything from the financial basics to business strategy and tax prep, all taught by our own ranching and finance experts from the team at Ranch Right. Join us online, ask questions, and get practical tools you can put to work tomorrow. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to receive updates on our next session, and catch up on all of our past webinars by visiting and subscribing to Ranch Right LLC on YouTube. All right, well, let's come back to the ranch. So after Dad retires the first time, give us the story, kind of how'd things go. I want to know about your July calving thing. Did that work out?
We didn't stay in July very long, mostly because 2008 came along. Well, let me back up. 2004, we had lost money, and I was with Farm Credit Services of America at the time, and my loan officer said, "Brian, what are we going to do? How are we going to make up this loss from last year?" And I had just been to Bud Williams sell-by school, and I said, "Cows are overvalued. We're going to sell all the cows, and we're going to take cattle in, because we live in north central Nebraska, and custom grazing rates are very high comparatively to other parts of the country." So I said, we're going to sell all the cows, and we're going to take cows in and until prices go back down and we can buy back in. Well, I don't know if cow prices ever really did go back down from 2002. They continued to, just go higher, but we took cows in for 4 years. I had a different loan officer at Farm Credit at that time then, and he said, "Brian, you're getting healed back up. Things are moving along. You're doing well. Maybe you should get back into the ownership of cattle." This is my 30-year-old self, and so I never did anything small or in increments. So we got rid of all of the custom grazing cattle, and we partnered with a couple different guys, and we bought 1,000 head of yearlings and was grazing them and trading them. And I think it was October of 2008 when the stock market crashed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had it's either 350 or 400 yearlings consigned to go to Bassett, Nebraska, and that week. And I told the guy that I was partnered with, I think it was actually a Monday when that stock market crashed, I believe, and the sale was on Wednesday. And I said, if we don't get what we want, we'll just bring them home. I got plenty of grass, and we'll just let things shake down and settle down and emotions get out of it. And so, not being very smart, I no-sailed those heifers at the barn that day. And we would have actually made money on those heifers at the bid that I had received. But I brought them home and fed them for 45 more days and took 10 cents a hundred less when we did sell them.
Yep. I'm sorry. Oh, that hurts.
It does, but but a guy learns from those things that hurt.
You're probably not real anxious to no-sale cattle anymore, are you?
No, we've learned, when you make a plan, I think it's better to stick with the plan and look at those relationships and move forward instead of, trying to outguess things, and because we don't guess very well, actually. So,
yep, turns out, yeah.
Yeah. The other deal that I was partnered with on those yearlings, we were actually trading those, and it was kind of a unique deal that we were trying out. And we were doing sell by with that group for sure. And then I was getting a percentage of the margin that we were trading. But at that time, our percentages, it was not working that well for me. And so we were trying to wind that deal down and get out of that. Anyway, we lost a pile of money that year.
And that was 2008.
That was 2008. Yep. So Farm Credit came and said, Brian, we have a problem. How are we going to fix this? What are we going to do? And so, we came up with a list of things that we could do. And then I got a phone call one day from a feed yard, a guy that I'd been wanting to meet but never had. And he said, Brian, are you interested in taking care of some cows for me? They were 10 miles away from us. They were May calving cows. One of his hired men, he did not want to take care of them. So he said, give me a list of 3 guys in Kippawa County that you would recommend. And my name happened to be at the top of the list. And this was kind of a cool story and a cool how we got started with him. But he called and I said I would be interested, mostly because they were already calving in May. I was calving in July. But how many feed yard guys do you know that calve in May? It was kind of a unique
0.
deal.
Not on purpose, anyway.
Yeah. And he said, I asked him, I said, what kind of arrangement are you looking for? And he said, you figure it out. And when you're ready, call me back and we'll talk. So we did a bunch of thinking and came up with some plans. And I called him, said we were ready. And so he came and sat at our kitchen table. And then the first thing he asked me was, Brian, do you enjoy what you're doing? I said, yeah, this is all I've ever wanted to do. He said, I spent 20 years working at a job that I hated. Then I had an opportunity to buy into a feed yard, and I thought if I'm going to own a feed yard, I might as well manage it. And he said, now I wake up every morning and I love what I do. He said, I just want to know if you love what you do. And so that's how we started off. Went from 120 cows at that time to, I think we're up to 600 cows right now and managing a bunch of ground for them. And we're coming up on 19 years that we've been working together, and it's been a good marriage, as he calls it.
Yeah, awesome. And there's nothing quite like being in business together than marriage, right? They're amazingly similar.
But his phone call came at a time when we needed cash flow. We had lost money and we were trying to figure out what to do. And so what I hope to share with you, John, through all of this is how important relationships are and people. That the money and the cattle, they come and go, but the relationships that you build with people and getting to work together with people has been, a huge thing in our progression through all of this. So that came at the perfect time for us, and we were able to start growing and creating cash flow on a monthly basis. And so it was a huge shot in our arm to do that.
Yeah, very good.
You didn't ever tell him how July calving went, though, I don't think.
Oh, that's all right. We're going to come back to that.
Good.
Go ahead. Let's talk about it now.
Well, because we were calving in July and Mike, that's the feedlot guy's name, was calving in May, I really didn't want to calve 4 months.
Twice.
Twice. And so we actually turned the bulls back in with our cows as soon as they started calving. And we were able to, that very first year, I think we moved up like 60% of the cows back to May. The second year basically moved the rest, and then we pulled the bulls, and now we calve, for 45 days, starting the 5th or 6th of May.
But so I think you found July was too hot for those black calves to sit out in the sun, and it was hard on them.
What we really found out was, yes, it was hard on them if you didn't have enough standing grass. If we grazed our pastures too short, then our calves suffered. But anywhere that I had plenty of ground cover and standing old grass, then I really didn't have to worry about the heat on those calves.
Yeah.
So that's
And
where
just
we
to
learned
give
the importance.
Yeah, just to give everybody a picture, the country you're in would really be categorized as mixed grass prairie, right? You're not tall grass, but you're kind of knee high, right?
Yep.
And a significant warm season component.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Interesting. So really, you didn't. I was assuming you were going to tell me things about July that really didn't work. Heat would be an obvious one. Your breed up was good, breeding for July.
Really, I mean, we only did it like 2 years before we started moving things back, and so I really can't speak to that well. Yeah, the cows were always fat when you calve that. I mean, it's similar to fall calving. In August, you can
And
run
there
them
are
pretty
people
thin.
in your area that fall calve, right?
Yep. Yeah, actually, quite a few, and more doing it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Did it have the intended effect of reducing your feed bill in the wintertime?
Yeah. Basically, going through Dick Diven's school, you have to use the fat off of their back, through the winter. And with those cows are calving, if they're gaining weight at calving, that's when you get the best conception rates. And so we would, leave the calves on. We would run them, pretty tough over the winter and pretty much graze most of the time. Right now, our goal is to feed less than 60 days, and there's been several years where we haven't fed any.
And you have enough residual forage to do that.
But you have to plan on that. That's one thing that I really had to learn. It's not, you don't graze your pastures all summer and then your stockpile is what's left. Now you have to plan to stockpile and to grow extra grass and have that for the winter time. So I think that's kind of a misconception some people have about winter grazing, is they just graze what's left after grazing in the summer. But it takes more planning and more thought than that.
Yeah. I would second that. I had a number of neighbors that when we first went to a low input winter program, and I've done this in a few different places, they'll approach and say, man, not feeding in the winter is not fair. And it's like, well, the way you get to not feeding isn't by just not feeding. You get to not feeding by having the residual feed there so that the cows can thrive without hay to them.
Yep.
So that sometimes it takes a little bit of explaining. So
yeah, and I went through that whole process of trying to starve a profit into cows and realizing that doesn't work either. There's some balances there, and you got to take care of them, and they'll take care of you.
Yeah, very good. So we're at 2008 is when you started that relationship, right? You had done ranching for profit in 2000. You went to Bud Williams' sell-by in the mid-2000s?
Yeah, it was probably 2004 maybe.
Okay. And you'd been implementing that with some of your partnership deals. Okay, good. And we've got now how many kids at this point by 2008?
Probably
all of them?
6.
Yeah, I mean, Shane was born in 2008.
Yeah,
so
Shane was
January of 2008.
Yep. So we got 6 kids by now.
Yeah, good. We got a busy house.
I could back up for just a minute. After ranching for profit, then I did join Executive Link for 3 years. And something with that, I always went by myself because Jill was home raising kids and taking care of kids. And if we were to do that over again, I think I would really try and get Jill to come, or we wait maybe a little bit till the kids were a bit older so she could come. But that it would have been much more beneficial if we could have done that together instead of just me. So just a shout out to anybody that's thinking about ranching for profit and Executive Link. I think it's important to go with your wife and be together on those things.
It sure helps add some depth to those conversations once you get home, doesn't it?
Yep.
Jill, did you feel like you missed out not going?
Kind of, but I can't say that I don't know if you'd say fully embraced it or fully encouraged it, because I felt like we had too much to do at home, but then also I probably didn't encourage him much to implement stuff at home. I mean, I don't know that I could have really discouraged it because he was pretty good about making his mind up and just doing things, but I might have not been as supportive as I should have on it. Maybe that's the way I should put it.
Yeah. And there is something to be said for the people you meet there, especially in EL that have done it, where you can say, okay, this seems like a crazy change. It's worked for other people. Maybe it'll work for us, kind of thing. And maybe that helps a person sleep better at night.
And I'm not always real good with new things. And so it was kind of new. And and for me, it was just easier to stay home. And I probably should have went, but hindsight's 20/20.
Let your husband be the crackpot wearing sandals around town, right? You maintain an air of normalcy so the children aren't scarred, right?
That's right.
That's awesome. Good. So, all right. So let's keep going. Roll on.
Yeah. So then we just kind of cruised along and, through the high cattle cycle of 2012, or 14 and,
Yeah. 14,
15
15,
there,
and
we had some cattle ownership, but mostly we were still doing some custom grazing. We leased cows from my grandmother. So this was another way that we kind of expanded a little bit was, she had some money sitting in CDs and she loved ranching. She grew up ranching, spent her whole life ranching, but she had money in CDs and it was, not doing anything for her, in those CDs. So
because at this point, interest rates are not zero,
Yeah.
but something very close to it.
Yeah, very close. And so I said, Grandma, what would you think about owning some cows again? And so she got pretty excited about that. And so we did a deal similar to what I had done with my dad, although it was more continuous. So I can't remember what year she bought the cows, but we just figured a 10% return, and that was my lease payment. So she gave $900 for those cows. So we gave her $90 a year lease. So I maintained her cow numbers for her, kept heifers back and kept her numbers. So when she ever did get out, she would have the same number of cows, and approximately the goal was to keep the age, very similar. So, she had a similar product to sell when she got out. But that was a great way for us to expand without having to buy the cows. But we got 100% control. I picked the bulls, we picked the calving time. All that stuff was in line with what we were already doing. We just got cows to go with it, and she got a return on her money that she wasn't getting before. So that was a huge boost in the arm for us also.
Yeah, great. That's a good deal.
Yep. Cruised along, went through the teens. My kids started graduating high school, and my dad was back helping us by this time. And we got to 2017, and we were still doing a fair bit of custom grazing. And one of my neighbors who had just moved in 2012 had bought a ranch pretty close to us, and we got to be really good friends. And he was a Kit Pharaoh cooperator herd, and we really liked what he was doing. And we got to 2017, and they were wanting to do a Nebraska bull sale with Pharaoh. And so my neighbor said, Brian, you do custom grazing. Would you be interested in developing the bulls for Kit? And so we talked about that for a couple months, and they had a sale in 2016 in Valentine, Nebraska, and we attended that sale and went to supper with Kit and the crew afterwards, and waited a few weeks, and I called Kit, and we worked out a deal to start developing bulls for Pharaoh Cattle Company. So January of 2017, we got our first bull crop in, and fall of 2017, we had our first sale that we had developed the bulls in Valentine, Nebraska. So,
and you do all that in a feed yard, right? They get a ration and do all
correct. It's a finishing ration on the bulls. No, this is their forage program.
Rewind. Sorry.
Yeah.
You don't know. Kit Pharaoh's a different program. Good.
This is their forage develop program. So the bulls don't get any starch. So I can supplement them if I need to, but I cannot use any form of starch of any kind. So we do feed some soy hull pellets at times, and sometimes I've tried different sources of protein, alfalfa and soybean meal and dried distillers, which, if they're doing their job right in the ethanol plant, there should not be any starch left in the distillers. And so I can use that a little bit. It's not our choice. That wouldn't be a product that we choose to use, but we do have access to a lot of it, and it's fairly reasonably priced here. But
they're primarily on pasture. That's what
Yep.
they're grazing to do their development.
Yep. And so that really starts sorting out the good bulls from the poor bulls, when it's on grass. So that was a whole nother learning curve, but it was also a whole new network of people that we got introduced to and relationships. And that's been really fun. Again, the relationship side of it and the people that we've got to meet through Pharaoh Cattle Company has been huge. So
love it.
2019, Kit said, Brian, maybe you should be a cooperator as well. So we had a couple hundred head of commercial cows at this time. And so Kit kind of talked us into being a cooperator. So we actually traded all of the commercial cows and bought registered Black Angus registered cows back from another cooperator within the Faro network. So,
And this was 19, you said?
It was actually the fall of 18 when we agreed to do this. And so we had our first calves born in the spring of 19.
How did the price of commercial cattle compare to registered cattle at that point? They probably weren't that different, huh?
It was about double, actually, John. We traded 2 commercial cows for 1 registered cow and felt like we could actually make more money. The gross margins were actually pretty good on the registered cows and selling bulls compared to
that was a pretty low time in the market generally, so I imagine you got a pretty good deal on those registered cows compared to what they would have been 3-4 years before that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We thought if we could run half the cows and make the same amount or even more money, that was a good move for us. And so we sold our first bulls in the fall of 2020. But you remember what happened in 2020?
I do indeed. Yes. 2020 turned out to be kind of a funny year.
2020 was also a year that we actually grew quite a bit. And I don't mean land-wise or financial-wise, but more intellectually. And we started doing a lot more learning. Ethan's my oldest. He was out of college, but Kylan and Colton were both in college, and they came home for spring break, and they wouldn't let them go back. And we had kids Keely was in high school, and then my youngest 2 kids were in grade school, and they couldn't go back to school. And so
you're back to a full house after almost graduating, huh?
Right? But we started listening to a lot of podcasts at that time. That's when our learning really started. We started reading more books, listening to more podcasts. And so that was kind of another turning point in our lives, just from the realizing how important that education is in our growth and in our development. And the kids really started doing that as well. And I've told all the kids, you don't have to go to college. If you do go to college, if you have to get a degree for what you want to do, then go. But I'm not going to tell you have to go to college, but I am going to tell you that you can't quit learning.
Yeah, you got to be educated.
And so you've got to continually be educating yourself. And so I do feel pretty tickled with all of the kids. They have embraced that and continue to listen, read books, listen to podcasts, and go to educational events. And so I've been pretty tickled with that.
Yeah, that's excellent. So 2020, for anybody that's not paying attention, was the year of COVID. So all kinds of things got shut down. It was a little wild in markets there for a while. It kind of worked out all right in the end. By fall, everything was kind of back to where it was. But between March and September, it was a little wild. All right, roll on.
Well, let's go back. I just, after going to Bud Williams School, and then we did a lot of different custom grazing, and we bought and sold calves and different things. And one thing Jill asked me one year, are we ever going to do the same thing 2 years in a row?
I've been asked that exact same question, Jill. Probably not, is my answer.
Sometimes the chaos in our lives got to be quite a bit because we were always doing different things. And I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Well, I'm just more of a routine person. So I kind of like to know what's coming, and I never know what's coming. And yeah, he changes quite a bit.
But it's always well thought out, right?
He may lead you to believe that, but I'm sure he's thought it out in his own mind. He hasn't always gone over everything with me before he says, we're gonna buy, however many of this. Yeah, it's pretty chaotic quite a bit of the time, it seems like.
Yeah.
And when he tells you that we're going to have the slowest summer and we're going to have all kinds of time to do whatever we want, just plan on the opposite.
Yeah. That's kind of like the 30-minute job that starts at 5:30 in the afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it's funny because after meeting Bud and spending some time with him, and after going to Ranching for Profit, and after taking the marketing school, it's like Yeah, there's so many new opportunities in there, and it is literally you wind up doing something different every year. Because once you understand how that market works and see those relationships, it's like, well, now it's telling me to do this. So if we have the capacity to do that, let's do it.
Yep. In 2004, when we sold all the cows, we actually bought sheep back.
But we didn't just buy 10 sheep. How many sheep did we buy, Brian?
We bought 300. That was another interesting learning curve with the sheep operation, but
we made it through.
How long did you own sheep?
Probably 2008 or 10, right in there. I mean, we had them for several years.
We were starting to learn too much about them and get it figured out too well, so we had to try the next thing.
Had to get rid of those, huh?
Yeah.
We did. We were struggling keeping them where we wanted them, and so our grazing was starting to struggle, and our grasses were starting to struggle. So, and we were also, the kids were all in school and all involved in activities. That was another point where something had to
cheap
give.
Labor was diminishing, huh?
Yep. Something had to give, and so we actually sold the sheep, got out of them. Yeah, I think we started buying more cows then and building the commercial cow herd up at that time.
Yeah, interesting. That's good. All right, well, we've made it past the pandemic. Where do we get to from there?
Well, let me go back a little bit again if I can. So
you bet.
Executive Link, I went to the Colorado Springs chapter, and that's where I met Wally Olson.
Yeah.
Wally was on my board for a few meetings. At that time, because Dave Pratt had just bought it from Stan, and Executive Link was, I don't want to paint a bad picture of Executive Link at all, but it was a struggle for me for a few years because we didn't have a consistent board for the 3 years that I was in there. It was people moving in and out, and Wally was on there for probably a year, and then he switched boards, and just some of my other board members were in and out, and we didn't have a consistent board for a consistent amount of time. So it was still a great learning process for me, and I did learn a lot, and there's actually people that were on my board for a fair amount of that time that I still actually talk to today. So that's pretty cool. That's why I kind of want to keep reiterating the relationships, John, and just how these people that you meet can influence or you can be an influence on them for a long time. So
yeah. Well, and we can put a further point on that. I think we met in the early 2000s, right, on an EL range tour or ranch tour. Now your daughter works for us, and you and I spend a fair amount of time over the last couple of years talking about ideas. So it's funny how these things happen.
It's really cool. That's why I just want to keep talking about people and relationships and the value of that. So, through Wally, went to some more sell-by schools and met more and more people all along the way. And it's been a fun ride along there. So let's get past the pandemic, as you said, in 2024. This was pretty cool, I think. But Dallas Mount now owns Ranching for Profit, and he had the KLR marketing group from Australia that studied under Bud and does the Bud Williams sell-by school in Australia. They were coming to Laramie, Wyoming, June of 2024. When I saw that posted, I'm like, wow, that would be really cool to go to. But I procrastinated and I didn't sign up, and it got full. My middle son, Colton, was at the Young Ranching for Profit school in Burwell, Nebraska that year. I think it was in June. And Dallas was the instructor, and Colton said, yeah, my dad really wanted to go to that KLR school, but it was full. And Dallas said, Colton, if your dad wants to go, have him call immediately because we just had somebody drop out and there's one opening left. So I called the office, got everything signed out. So I went to the KLR marketing school, and the night before the school was to start, there was a ranch tour at Shannon Sims's ranch.
I don't think that was a ranch tour. I think that was a mosquito feeding.
Well, you're not wrong about that. Yeah, they must have been hungry, and Shannon knew that and brought in fresh meat.
He was trying to get them off his back.
Yep. So I actually was not going to go to that. And Jill said, Brian, you're driving 8 hours to Laramie. leave a few hours early and go to this ranch tour. So
Good advice.
I
Jill.
did.
Excellent.
I'm a slow learner, John, but I do try and listen to my wife now. She has pretty good instincts about things that I don't have. I'm a little impulsive at times, and she has a better gut than I do. So went to the ranch tour that night, or the Mosquito Fest. They really encouraged us to carpool on the tour, and I jumped in a vehicle, and everybody started introducing themselves. And this gentleman said, hello, my name is Ed Brown, and I'm from California, but I have a ranch in Nebraska. And I was like, oh, where is that? And he said, oh, this tiny little town that you've never heard of, and called Crookston, Nebraska. And I said, Ed, I actually live about an hour and a half from there. I know exactly where it's at. And he was looking for a ranch manager. And so we chatted for the whole week, and after left, said, let's talk some more this fall. So October, Ed was back up at the ranch in Nebraska and invited us to come out and tour his ranch. And so we did. And then December, he came back again, and we invited him to our ranch. And so he came, and when he got ready to leave, he said, Brian, what would you think about you and your family managing my ranch for me? And so we didn't agree at that time, but we said we'd talk about it. And February of 25, we kind of agreed to do it with we were able then to take over management of his ranch July 1st of 2025. So again, another educational opportunity that led to a relationship that led to an opportunity for us. And so it's a beautiful ranch. It's been taken care of well in the past, and led to an opportunity for my middle son, Colton, who got married in June of 2025.
Right. He's now graduated and married. And
got home from their honeymoon, and they moved right onto the ranch. And I told him, I said, this is an opportunity for you two to rely on each other and not worry about dad looking over your shoulder every minute of every day. And so I think this would be a cool place for you guys to be if you're willing to do it. And they agreed to it. And so it's been a huge blessing, I think, for Ed, and Ed's been a blessing to us, and another opportunity. But that's also at that KLR school where you and I got reconnected, John.
After like 20 years, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Got to spend some time with you and learn a little bit about Ranch Right and what you guys do there, and spend a little time helping you guys out before we took over the Crookston Ranch. So again, just it's such a people business everywhere that we go.
And it's a small crowd. You meet one, you probably know a few others that go along with it.
For sure.
So what are you doing now? Unless there's more between 24 and 26.
Yeah. So August of 25, we bought a hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we know nothing about the entertainment, or not entertainment, the hospitality world, but what we're learning. So a small 8-bedroom or 8-unit hotel in Springview. And so Jill is currently managing that, and everything is online. It's all remote. So she can take all the bookings, on her phone or computer, and remote locks on the doors. So she sends them a code, and they can check in. There's actually nobody at the hotel manning a desk or anything like that. So that's been another cool learning experience and a growth for us, but also leads to probably where we're at today, which is what we talked about probably before you started recording, is just sometimes we get, or I should say I get ahead of myself, maybe. And so between developing bulls and running registered cows and managing this ranch and managing a ranch at Crookston and owning a hotel, we can get pretty strung out. And maybe that's probably the phase that we're going through right now, is trying to figure out what is really important and what's best for us. And there's probably going to come a point here where we have to let a few things go. But the hotel was never meant to be a full-time gig for us. We bought it with the intent that we wanted to have a greater influence in our community. And so that's why one of the reasons we purchased it and wanted to run it. But we want it to be, a passive income for us in the future. But we wanted to run it for a couple of years so we knew what needed to be done and how to move forward with that. But that's the goal.
I don't know what I thought before we bought it, how it ran, but there's just a lot more to it, and just the upkeep, and you just want your rooms to be nice and clean when people come in, and there's just kind of always something to do. It's been interesting, and parts of it have been fun. Parts of it, of course, have been a headache, or you just got a lot to figure out and pay attention to
Less
because you
than
want
fun, we'll describe those as.
yeah, you want people to be happy with their stay, and most of the time we get good feedback, but we're always looking to improve too. So it's been interesting.
So 25 was a big year for us because we took over the Crookston Ranch, bought the hotel, but then also, you and Wally and Cinnamon Lindenhart were all part of ranching.fyi, and Wally asked me if I would like to become part of that, and so I started joining with you guys, and then eventually, got part of an ownership role in that, and so that was a huge another people network where we've enlarged our circle again, with ranching.fyi and the educational things that we do there, and the market pulse on Monday, and the financial Q&A with you on Wednesday, and the sell by marketing schools that we're doing, the simulations that we're doing with them also, and got some cool things that we're thinking about for the future, as well. And so,
and I think public speaking was always something you wanted to do, right? That's always been high on your list.
No, but if I can go back and thank my mom in 4-H, when I was a kid, she made us do 4-H
Having
speeches.
to do that stuff.
Then when I got to college and I had to take a speech class, I still didn't like it, but I could do it. But the number of kids in that class who physically could not get up in front of a room and give a speech, it was crazy. So I go back and thank my parents for making me do those things that further developed us, going down the road.
I love it. That's so funny. Very good. So here we are a few years down the road. What do you think the future holds? As you said, you're having to make some important decisions about, your time. You are 10 years older than your dad now when he retired?
Not quite. I just turned 51, so my dad turned things over when he was 48 to me. I'm past that, so yes. We're thinking along those lines of succession right now. That's the other big thing. We do have 6 kids. Again, 4 of them are married. They all love the ranching world. What does it look like in the future for us? I don't know for sure, but those are some big key things that we also have to be working on, here right away. Making sure financially we're in a position to hand off or do something with the kids that's viable, and have them trained to a position, where they are able to take over. So that's another key step that we've got to be working on in the next few years, and what that looks like. I don't know for sure, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, good. That's excellent.
I think we have at least 6 businesses. We could just pass one off to each one of them.
And then what would you do for chaos in your life, Jill? Come on.
Move to Hawaii. I mean, this wouldn't be chaos. Maybe I could sit for a couple minutes.
I love it. Were you about to say move to Hawaii?
I did.
I love this option. Oh, very good.
I don't know that Hawaii is where you want to be, but maybe it is.
Probably not.
Have you been?
No.
Or you should definitely go. You can decide if you want to live there while you're there. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. I'm sure Brian wouldn't be happy there, but...
There's big ranches in Hawaii, too.
Oh, there are indeed.
Yeah, in fact, one of the guys on my EL board that one year was a ranch from Hawaii.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I mean, they put calves on a ship and shipped them to the mainland. And then some of those calves ended up in Nebraska.
Right. We used to take in those in Nevada.
Yep.
It must be a long boat ride because those calves were in rough shape when they got to us. I know that. So.
I bet.
Well, guys, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Again, the point of this is to primarily talk to people that are in the middle. And I know you guys feel like you're kind of still in the middle somewhat. But you got a whole bunch of things figured out here along the way. And even though things aren't the same year to year, you have some recipes you know how to follow for how to make those decisions. So it's always fun to visit. And like you say, the relationships are so important. for decades across our careers, we accumulate relationships, and it's amazing how they work out later in life, that sort of thing. So it's kind of cool.
Well, one thing, John, that we try and live by is, in 2020, when we started listening to more books and podcasts, was we started listening to a lot of Zig Ziglar.
Oh, yeah.
And one of his quotes is something that we try and live by, and that's, you can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. So that's what we're trying to do here, and utilize this ranch to help other people, and, the hotel to help other people, and just those relationships that we built. If we can help anybody at all, that's what we want to do.
Well, I would say that often our children are a pretty good statement of what we're trying to do, and your kids are, all the ones I've met are top notch. I don't think I've met all 6, but I think I've met 4, and they're pretty awesome kids. So they're a real testament to what you guys have done over the years. So
we appreciate that, and I'll just say they have a really good mom.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. That's what they need. Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. It's fun to visit, and look forward to the next time. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks for tuning in to Ranchonomics Stories. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with a friend or family member who you think would find it helpful too. Be sure to subscribe and follow the show so you don't miss next week's story.